the NFL draft obviously happening over the rest of this week, starting Thursday. We are going to do some pretty rapid fire questions, but what I'm going to do is lay them out to Travis and I'll lay them out to Shawn, and we'll see if we have any consensus or any differentiations, and we'll see then what happens to play out. But the first thing is going to be a little bit of kind of how many. So we've talked on the show on Monday about quarterbacks and wide receivers. So first up, quarterbacks in the first round. How many quarterbacks, Travis, do you see being taken day one?
I think at least 3. I think we can definitely bank on Malik Willis. We can definitely bank on Kenny Pickett. Whether or not that's a good decision is up to, well, we'll see. But then Matt Corral, I think, is another guy who should be safe. I think NFL decision makers are very high on him, and I am too. I think we talked about him earlier this week. He's got great peak pass efficiency and rushing production. I think he'll go. And then after that, like Howell and Ritter could be the wild cards that pass up and go instead of Corral. But I'd whoever drops out of round 1, I think, round pick 34, 35, somebody trades up. We'll see like 5 top 40 or so quarterbacks in this class.
Shawn, we've talked a good bit about the quarterback class on the podcast itself, and we've talked about trying to get those quarterbacks on our fantasy team. So we've drafted before the NFL draft. Do you think it is going to be 5 as well, or do you think we'll be seeing 4 go in the first round?
No, it's going to be all 5.
And then I might flick this back and forth, but top 15, Shawn, I'll let you jump in on this one. How many do you see in that top 15?
4, right? And it's going to be similar to the draft with Mahomes and Watson, where teams get in there to get those guys in the top 15. And as soon as the draft starts, as soon as the first 5 picks are done, teams are going to be moving to try and get up there and get their guy out of that group that Travis described so beautifully on Monday.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. I think once those trades start to kick off, it'll be interesting. And that would only be good for my Packers and your Chiefs, Shawn, if some of those other players can be moved down a little bit then on the board. Are you in agreement with that, Travis?
I think it's actually just going to be 2 top 15 and then 1 to 3 that get close to that. Just depends on how the draft goes. But I think Willis is kind of locked in there. Pickett, a few teams like him more than they should, but the other 3 are just they're all over the place for me in terms of where I could see them going, just because of where teams are currently situated and whether they think they need to trade up in terms of the teams that I could see taking a quarterback. So I think 1 or more drops to like the Saints or the Steelers or somebody else that could be looking for their future signal caller later in round 1. But we'll see here soon.
We did joke a little bit about it on Monday's podcast with the wide receivers that may end up with the Chiefs, but I hinted at it there. We're hoping to get some wide receivers to both the Chiefs and the Packers in this draft. So round 1 for wide receivers, how many do you see going, Travis?
Anymore, like it's like 5 or 6 are always in the mix. And so I think we see at least 4, if not 6, go in round 1. If I had to bet, I would say 6, just because of kind of like the conversation we had earlier this week. Teams are just really desperate for that position. They're really desperate for elite playmakers, and that, as evidenced by the $20+ million getting shelled out to the position at the top right now to Devontae Adams and company. But Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams, despite him coming off the injury, Drake London, Chris Olave, those 4 I think are the safest for me. But after that, I do believe that guys like Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, even Christian Watson could sneak into the end of round 1 because teams just really want that position. And Treylon Burks, I think every bit deserves to be a first-round pick, given his production profile, given him being an absolute unicorn in a billion ways. But the other 2, I think, are kind of fringe first-round. Well, Christian Watson's not, but Jahan Dotson's on that fringe that he might not go and he might not deserve that early capital either.
So we'll set the over-under, Shawn, for first-round picks at 6. Are you going above that or below that?
I'll take 9. I'm going to take all of those guys, and I think that Skyler and George Pickens go in the final couple of picks of the first round.
We're going to have it's going to be just all wide receivers and quarterbacks in round 1. It's going to be amazing.
That would be fun. would be super fun for fantasy purposes. Oh my
It
gosh.
would be. It'll be amazing. And then top 15, Travis, back to you. Top 15 wide receivers. I'll set it at over under 3.
Top 15, man, that's gonna be a close one. I think it's gonna be under 3, and we're gonna see Garrett Wilson being the only lock I feel like goes that early, and then there will be a run later in the round at the position.
And Shawn, how are you feeling on that?
That's the way I also have it. I think it's going to be 1. I think it's going to be Wilson. And then as teams move up to get those quarterbacks, it's going to push the other guys out of the top 15. But as soon as you get out of the top 15, they're just obviously going to be going like hotcakes.
Yeah, that's good. Even talking about this, I can feel the excitement just building. One of the players we've talked about possibly the most on the shows over the last month to 6 weeks is Brecce Hall. Where, Travis, do you think his approximate pick number is within a 4-pick range?
Oh my gosh, within a 4-pick range, that's quite the dartboard you got for me.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be in between picks 44 and 47. Yeah.
Okay, so we're into the mid-second round there, Shawn. Do you think before or after that pick range for Brecce?
Well, I think if I'm wrong about the wide receivers, and obviously I'm probably going to be wrong, it opens up a possibility for one of these teams to say, look, I mean, the actual good prospect here, and by good, I mean elite prospect, is Hall. His score in the running back prospect lab is fantastic. He has the production. He has the athleticism. I think teams are going to look at what happened with Jonathan Taylor and be like, why did we pass on a guy who changes everything for positions maybe that we thought were more important at the time, but we're going to get just a far less talented player. One of the things I look back with here is Christian McCaffrey and where he was being projected pre-draft. And then maybe it was a couple days before the draft that you started to hear rumors that he could go earlier, but he was projected at the end of round 1. And you're looking at him thinking, I mean, this is one of the greatest running back prospects of all time. And if he's able to do what his profile suggests, then he completely changes the game. You know, why would that person not go in the top 10? And then the Panthers, it turns out, actually were on him despite where he was being projected the whole way. I'm going to have 16 to 20 as the range here. I think there's a team out there that actually thinks Hall can change their offense in a big way. And, you know, we've got a lot of teams out there who can't pass because about half the teams don't have quarterbacks. There are some teams that are going to have to try an old school approach to be competitive, at least in the near term.
Yeah, that was going to be my bounce back question. If both of you had went for outside the first round, is there a chance that he does go in the first round? So I'll put that to you, Travis. You said kind of mid-second round. Do you think there's a chance that he goes in that first round?
Yes, and mainly I love Brecce Hall. I think he's been, I don't know, he's been around my first overall player in most formats or in that conversation among that top tier for, I guess, over a year for this class, maybe 2 years for this class. And so I love Brecce Hall and what he did to really perfect his profile and have back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons and then show up to the combine and crush everyone's expectations and be an athletic specimen too. He has far and away the most obvious running back 1 profile in the class. And really, other running backs haven't helped themselves out too much. Isaiah Spiller has not helped himself out. Kenneth Walker kind of did, but he wasn't as impressive as Brecce throughout the process and doesn't have as good a profile either. So if there's a clear running back 1 and it seems like I don't want anybody besides Brecce, so I could see somebody reaching for him. But given how teams invest in the position, that really informed where I thought he would go. I think given where teams are valuing that position, even in a stacked group that we thought was amazing in 2020, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the first one to go at pick 32. Sorry to bring up open old wounds there for you, Shawn. But I mean, so I think that the teams are going away from that position. That was really more what it was about than Hall's ability, because I think he firmly should be in that first round discussion. He's that talent. He's the obvious, no debate running back 1 in the class to me.
And you touched on it there, the Edwards-Helaire and the Jonathan Taylor picks. Is there any chance this year that we actually see Walker or somebody else go ahead of Brecce Hall as the running back 1 in the draft, Travis?
Yeah, I think Walker's probably the only one that has the opportunity for that to be the case. I mean, nobody thought it was going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire going into it. And so maybe I'm wrong, and I am that sometimes. But I don't think there's anyone that could do it besides Walker. And if it is somebody, I'm praying it's Rachaad White, because that would be amazing. But because that's like my bae in this class. Oh my goodness. But no, it's going to be Breece. It's going to be him, running back 1.
I think, Shawn, you're probably sitting the same way. It's definitely going to be Hall. That's the first running back. There's nobody that should, unless it's a Edwards-Helaire situation, there's nobody that should challenge him there.
Well, I mean, nobody should challenge him. That's not the way the draft works. So,
No.
I mean, you want a guy with like a 16 score in the running back prospect lab. It seems like, why not just take Dameon Pierce there, and then for the rest of his career, you can be like, well, it's still not as bad as what the Chiefs did. So the team that makes that move can always look back and make that claim.
Moving on now to some wide receivers again, and we are recording this on Monday evening, the 25th. So some stuff may break between the release of this podcast and obviously the NFL draft and how things go. But do you think that Deebo Samuel gets traded before or during the draft, Travis?
Yeah, I could see it during. Yeah, I think so. I think when teams actually see the names coming off the board and they're panicking and thinking, "Oh gosh, I need this player now," or maybe they missed their wide receiver that they absolutely had to have, and they're like, "Well, crap, that Deebo guy, maybe I can go grab him." And so there's another blockbuster trade for him along the way. I could see that happening for sure. I wouldn't say that it's more likely than not, but I'd say 40% chance, or close to it, that Deebo gets traded before or during, because he clearly wants out, which is bizarre to me, because he has like the most incredible role in the entire NFL. But he's already had health concerns even before he got to the NFL, and if he wants to, if quality of life is really important to him, I get it. But man, potentially abandoning the coolest role in the league right now, like that's kind of weird.
And to tie these both in, because if he is traded, we talked about the Packers and the Chiefs. They have 2 first-round picks each, and then the Jets are really the team that has been linked mostly with Samuel. But is there a chance that Deebo goes to one of those teams? And the second part of that question is going to be, how many first-round wide receivers do both the Packers and the Chiefs select?
Okay, sorry.
That's an open-ended question. So
yeah, it is.
does Deebo land with either the Packers or the Chiefs?
I think it would make a lot of sense with the Chiefs. And I don't know about you, Shawn, but I would love that if Deebo went to the Chiefs, because the way that they deployed Tyreek with so much motion and just confusing defenses like that, that's perfect for Samuel. He's not the vertical threat necessarily at all that Tyreek Hill is or was, but he brings the schematic confusion that I think Tyreek Hill can. So that would be fun, and I think that would be a perfect marriage, and that wouldn't kill Samuel's I guess fantasy outlook, where a lot of teams really could.
How do you feel about that, Shawn? Would it excite you, and could it happen?
It'd be exciting, and it could happen. The thing here, so much of I think listeners can probably tell that the Chiefs' rhetoric in the last couple of days has been a little bit upsetting, because one of the things that Ben was saying, very dramatically on Stealing Bananas, was that he felt like the Seahawks were the worst dynasty manager in your league, where they hit on a player. In this case, obviously for Seattle, it was Russell Wilson, but then they make all of these other mistakes. They're still fairly successful, and they think that they're good, when in fact it was just Russell Wilson. Now, the situation with the Chiefs, Andy Reid is a far better coach than Pete Carroll. The overall organization, because he's such a good coach, is set beyond Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they were successful, obviously not to quite the same level, but they were successful with Alex Smith, right? So it's not just Patrick Mahomes, but his competence and Patrick Mahomes' competence has covered up just a raft of mind-bogglingly poor decisions that the Chiefs have made both in the draft and in free agency. And so, this whole deal with Tyreek Hill seems to have a lot of elements of these dynasty trades, where you have a team that feels like for whatever reason they want to move one of their key assets. They make that move. They get back a package that kind of, what the Chiefs got back was fine. Just like what the Seahawks got back for Russell Wilson was fantastic, right? But then the thing that you can't do is go back and immediately spend all of that in a way that makes your team worse. And one of the things that they did was sign Marquez Valdes-Scantling, which just not a great use of a lot of the money that they saved from not paying Tyreek Hill. So if you sign Marquez Valdes-Scantling and then you go out and turn around and trade for a different wide receiver and pay him, you're going to end up losing in the long run in terms of what all of those transactions look like. Now, again, because you're the Chiefs and you do have this backdrop of Patrick Mahomes, then some of the stuff could still work out. So it actually still work out if they had Debo, but it would make it more difficult to address some of the other needs that they have because it's going to be very expensive. I don't think that Debo is going to get traded just because you're going to have to give up a quarterback package to get him. And I think that makes it harder. I mean, Debo has done sort of the right things in terms of maximizing his leverage. I mean, you want to talk about starting the negotiation from a position of strength. He's just like, don't even make an offer. Well, I mean, that changes what that first offer is, right? It makes it much higher still. Maybe they do trade him. It doesn't really matter to him. I mean, either way, it's going to work out. This don't even make me an offer move, trade me means that wherever you go, the team is very well anchored to this idea of, okay, we're going to have to pay him an absurd amount of money. And then, he's going to have, okay over the plays and the scheme. It's like, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot going on there. Now, Debo is unbelievably good. I don't think it makes sense to use him as a runner. I think that they will go back to using him more as a wide receiver. If there's another team in which he would be the perfect fit, it is the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Because they did run into a problem with Edwards-Helaire to where he can't be the receiving back. Debo, I don't think you want to be handing the ball. It doesn't sound like he wants to be handed the ball, but if you could use him as the receiving back, I mean, that would absolutely be fantastic for the Chiefs and what they do. Debo's actually a much better overall wide receiver than Tyreek Hill, who is a 4-2 guy who has Patrick Mahomes, right? Debo's actually a superstar. And so it would be a big upgrade. He's a younger guy. There are ways that could work out. I still think it's really tricky in terms of working through all of the specifics of it and where kind of both teams would be, once the trade actually took place, if it ever got to that point.
And then the second part of that question was the Packers and the Chiefs both with 2 first-round picks each. So what we might do is there's 4 first-round picks between them. How many wide receivers do you think that are drafted with those 4 picks, Travis?
I think 2.
Do not say 0, please.
I think 2. I think 2. And yeah, that'll be fun. 1 for the Packers, 1 for the Chiefs. So they'll fill some other kind of need there. I think the Packers, if I was a Packers fan, I would really want at this this point of Aaron Rodgers' career, like he just needs somebody who can get open by themselves. And when I look at the wide receivers that are already there, and they have Alan Lazard, who has never really been a separator. Is Randall Cobb still there? Like, Sammy Watkins, and then a whole bunch of nothing. I mean, like Amari Rodgers maybe in the future, but man, they need somebody who's a technician. And if I'm looking for a technician, I'm going to go with Chris Olave. Somebody who has proven to be an incredible deep threat, especially earlier in his career when he had to be. But he can work the intermediate. He just makes his own separation with ease. And I think that's perfect for the Packers with what they need right now. And with the Chiefs, I think if they're planning ahead, mixing in that with what they actually need right now, they really do need more speed. But I think long-term, if they're thinking Travis Kelce is on the back 9, maybe the back 3 of his career, they may look at another big-bodied wide receiver if he actually can make it that far. And like I said, he might not, but if I were hoping to see like anybody fall to them, and I think it would be a good fit, I think Drake London would be somebody that I think would fit that Travis Kelce role in the future. So they use Travis Kelce as like this big slot already, right? Drake London was actually, before he was all over the place in his final season, in the spread formation for USC, he was actually primarily like a bigger slot option who ran all the routes, could get run after catch on screen situations, and just moss people as well. And so if you wanted to utilize him in a similar role, obviously he's a little bit small, quite a bit skinnier than Kelce, but in the future, he could be that, because you're not ever going to get another Travis Kelce. Like, he's one of the greatest of all time. But if you get somebody that can just moss people and do a lot of the same thing, and is maybe more flexible and maybe a little bit faster, Drake London could be that. And that would be an underrated fit in my mind for the Chiefs.
It's going to be interesting. I think the Packers probably go wide receiver. I could see them trading back from one of those picks as well to try and fill out some other slots. But Shawn, Travis said 2 wide receivers out of those 4 picks. That's kind of where I'm sitting as well. Do you think it'll be 2, or do you think it could be more or less?
Well, before I answer that quickly, Travis, break down Trey McBride for us and his profile.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of receiver is he? What kind of athlete is he? What kind of blocker is he?
Trey McBride is the clear runaway tight end 1 in this class and has been so for, I don't know, several months. Like, I think that back to like October of last year, I was like, well, I like Trey McBride. He's on all of my College to Canton teams. And that's fantastic because he's clearly the tight end 1 in this class. And he was basically the Travis Kelce of college football last year. I mean, he caught over 90 balls for like 1,100 yards and was perfection for like production standpoint. It was against lower level competition, but no one came close to producing the way that he did. And from a yardage and reception standpoint, Brock Bowers was incredible. Michael Mayer, incredible. They're both going to be first round picks in their own classes in 23 and 24. But Trey McBride, while he's not Kyle Pitts, can make one-handed catches. He can separate against defensive backs. He is just a well-balanced, dominant player who got 100% of Colorado State's touchdowns in 2020 and then followed it up with an 1,100-yard season in 2021. Nobody came close to him. And I can say that over and over again because it's just unreal what he was doing week in, week out. If you had him in for college fantasy, congratulations. You won your league's championship because he just carried his team through the air. And I could definitely see him doing that again in the NFL.
So I'm going to go 2 in terms of Packers and Chiefs. I'm going to go 2 to the Packers, 0 to the Chiefs. I think the Packers are in a pretty cool situation where they could go both with a big and a small. We don't know if Olave or Williams will be the guy that makes it there. You kind of hope that one of the 2 guys make it there. I mean, there is a scenario in which the sort of 5 trendiest or 4 trendiest wide receivers go, around that 15-16 range. But Packers could go with, say, Williams and Burks. I think that would be very exciting in terms of what it sets them up for. The Chiefs, let's project them to trade for both Laviska Shenault and Kadarius Toney during the draft, and then select Trey McBride either with a move down or with one of their second-round picks. And then you have that Gronkowski-Hernandez attack. Andy Reid, again, I mentioned, one of the best 2 or 3 coaches in the NFL, this amazing scheme guy offensively, an amazing play caller, and someone who's willing to evolve to different things that are happening. And one of the things that they did do last year was around midseason, they were able to come up with some attacks to kind of get back going again after the very conservative defenses took them out of that a little bit. They're going to have Ronald Jones. He's going to be able to run the daylight. They have some guys who are under. I mean, Mecole is basically just toss him to the ball from 1 inch away and then let him try and run around the end and see if he can take it, which he does sometimes. I mean, he's unbelievable with the ball in his hands. You look at him and say, do you want like 3 guys who kind of fit that with Toney and Shenault as well? But I think that there's more to what those guys can do. You have Juju, who there's the potential reemerges as one of the best over the middle receivers in the entire NFL. You have MVS to take the defense deep. And if you put together that offense, I mean, one of the things too is if you make those moves, Toney and Shenault, much, much, much less expensive than Debo. Is it any likelihood that they would get to ever be like him? Probably not. But if you trade for both of them, then you've got 2 shots at it. You want to do things inexpensively that have upside as opposed to overpaying for something that still has a huge bust risk, which is what the Chiefs have, sent the message that they're going to do. But if you did that, you would have this opportunity of one of those guys to work out. McBride, I think, is the player who is just so exciting kind of in this range and in this draft. You put him with Kelce. Number 1, the 2 tight end approach, you could just eviscerate the NFL with it. But then number 2, you have somebody to kind of fill in behind Kelce in that scenario. You would certainly hope that Kelce doesn't look at that as them saying, we think that you're on your last legs, because even though he's in his 30s, I mean, he's the best tight end in football, but it would accomplish multiple things for them. And so I don't know. There's a lot of cool stuff that could happen the Chiefs could do in this draft. And let's be optimists right now. Let's say the Chiefs are going to do that. Kadarius Toney, Laviska Shenault on the Kansas City Chiefs this time next week.
Yeah, Sean, I always love when we get into bold predictions because I'm always wondering, like, is it just gonna be a quick one? But Sean, like, really gets the crystal ball
Man.
out. So if that one does happen and we're doing the show next week, I don't know what we do, but that's one. I think Trey McBride would be super fun if that did happen. And look, I think that would really revitalize Visca's dynasty stock too. So I would be down for that. The last one we're going to do as we get ready to finish up is round one trade. So I guess you can include all types of trades if picks are moved. So if it is players plus picks who are veterans, I suppose we can count that. But we talked and Shawn mentioned about trades for quarterbacks, and obviously we could see how things play out. But I think over under 5 trades in the first round. Do you want to go over or under, Travis?
I'll go under. I think it's like when we're in a league or any kind of rookie draft where there's kind of a more chalk class where there's clear tier breaks here and here and here. And I know I need to trade up around this range, or I know I need to trade up here to get this exact guy. But when there's more confusion or disagreement with classes, you don't have all these trade ups because everyone thinks, oh, my guy's going to drop because there's like 5 wide receivers in this tier, or 3 or 4 running backs in this tier, or 4, in this class. That's a great example. There's 5 quarterbacks where I have no idea how my league mates are valuing all these 5 quarterbacks. And I think the league is kind of right there, especially once we get past the obvious names. There's just wider tiers for a lot of these positions. I mean, offensive tackle, that I think that pushes a lot of these other positions down because the offensive line is so freaking deep this year. Like there's like 6 or 7 that are going to go way earlier than I think we projected even like back in January. So I think people are just going to take their guy, and they're going to be okay with getting some similar players down the line, which is not normal for first rounds. Cause like normally I feel like there's like 20 plus players that are locked in first round picks. And then this year we don't see that with quarterbacks. We don't see that necessarily with running backs at all. Wide receivers, like it's take your pick from like the top 6 or 7, I think, for a lot of people. So I think it's going to be under.
So Travis goes under 5. I'm going to go with 7. So Shawn will leave you with over or under 7 trades. I think we're going to the league seems to have got more into their dynasty vibe where their more trades are happening. So maybe some of the general managers around the league are more comfortable making those moves. So I'm going to go with 7. Where are you sitting, Shawn, for first round trades?
Well, let's just make it as exciting as possible. I'll go over, but I also want to cede my explanation time. Not that we're supposed to have any on the sort of rapid fire, but cede it to Travis because I did want to ask him one more question here. With outside of Rachaad White, do you have a guy that you're dreaming that he gets picked at a spot where you can still then dream about him again next week? Do you have a guy where you're just desperately hoping the NFL sees him the way you do and goes maybe on day 2?
I think no. I mean, like Rachaad White is definitely the obvious name for me, and I've felt that way for a long time because he was maybe the best receiving back in the country last year. He was maybe the most efficient back in the country the year before that. And yes, he went the JUCO route, went an odd route, and he's a little bit older. But man, like if he gets day 2 value and is in a spot to smash early, like it's going to be impossible to get him in redraft or in redraft leagues. It's going to be impossible to get him in and even rookie drafts because people are so desperate for running backs to just hit, And so I hope he smashes because I already have him everywhere. Like I already have him like in all my W leagues and like college tight leagues. Like it's that rare instance where I've already locked my favorite player up, and if he just lands there, like that would be perfection. But I think if there was one other than him, it would actually be the ghost of Kyren Williams, because people have assumed that he is dead apparently after his embarrassing display at the combine. But again, at his pro day, he improved his time, and you can put an asterisk by that if you want. But Kyren Williams was not as slow, I don't think, as he ran on that day at the combine. Like if you look at who he's outrunning and some of the players he's outrunning in several of his games, like had much faster times than he did at the 40. And so like game speed for him, I don't really have any concern. And so if I get him at a discount, he sneaks into the back end of round 3. but people are like, man, he's that slow guy. He's still running his 40 today. And I think he could still, even if he sneaks into day 2 in a low key, awesome situation, because people already killed him off 2 months ago. I think he's still value. So Kyron Williams, and he's just as incredible as a receiver. And he's a balanced back. He doesn't have the size necessarily, but man, he's a really fun talent. And I think we weren't all wrong on Kyron Williams. Like, we like in the Devy community, we liked Kyron Williams because of what he brought as a receiver. And in today's game, he's the perfect back, just maybe 5-10 pounds under what we want him to be. But yeah, Kyron Williams would be that other player that I'm hoping for.
That's a cool awesome name to hear. I've got an article that just came out on Williams that offers a little bit of optimism. And as you pointed out, he's probably more athletic than people realize. And it's a situation where people do like to discount the pro days. There's some reason to, have a little bit of an asterisk, or at least realize that it was a pro day as compared to the combine. But you have guys like David Bell and Isaiah Spiller, both players I like. I'm not against those players, but when they did their work at the pro days, were not able to really improve on their athletic profiles and erase some of those doubts. So the fact that Williams did that, also put up a good 3-cone time, that is meaningful for him. It'll be exciting to see where he goes. I'm going to have my player that I'm hoping desperately gets into a decent draft slot tomorrow on Stealing Bananas. And Colm, Travis did it again. He's always fantastic to have on the show.
Did you enjoy that clip? Make sure you hit that subscribe button to get more content from RotoViz. And of course, you can check out full-length podcasts at rotoviz.com/podcast. Available on all podcast platforms. Check out our wide range of content. Once again, rotoviz.com/podcast.